the criteria that I'm using when rating these characters is their impact on the story. So like how influential their actions were in the story to either progressing the story or halting that progression. A second criteria, which is obviously going to bring bias, is just how much I personally like the character. I guess the last one would be like lore that I've, like history and, you know, facts and stuff that I've learned about the characters during the Singularity. All right, let's kick it off with Orleans. So here we have these characters. We have Atalante. Now this is tricky. Should I judge these characters? No, I'm going to judge them just based on what they did in Orleans. Because I know I have context for her from Apocrypha as well. I'm not going to take that into account. So when it comes to Orleans, I don't remember her doing too much. I'm not going to lie. She kind of just popped in and died. But, no, I think I got to put her at the bottom probably. I'll put her at the bottom. She didn't do too much, at least not as much as I'd like. And same with this guy. They needed more screen time. They didn't have nearly as strong of storylines as like Carmilla, for example. I think A probably. For Carmilla, I'd probably put her in A. Just because of one, the lore I learned about her character while watching through or playing through it, and also the like how her story ties into Elisabeth's. I think that's really cool. I love the like banter between Elisabeth and Kiyohime, so I feel like I gotta put her up here too. When it comes to George, good guy George, probably put him in C. He had more than these two when it comes to content. I mean, he's a dragon slayer. He was what Siegfried should have been in the beginning. And then Siegfried eventually came around. He was injured, I understand. But I like George. George is a cool dude. Even though I don't know anything about his actual character, I think what he did here was pretty cool. Next, this guy, the main man. Oh, we have both of them, both of the Giles. I'm not gonna lie, I really like the twist in the end. Which makes him pretty interesting. The fact that he was the big villain this whole time and it wasn't Jalter. As a character, I do not like him. But that's mostly because of what he did in Fate Zero, so I can't hold that against him here. He ultimately didn't do too much until the very end. He was a part of the big plot twist. And I love the fact that the Jalter that was created here was actually his image of Joan of Arc. Ultimately, I don't know, I really like that. But I don't really like him. So I guess I'll put that in B. What he did in the story was really cool, but he isn't a very likable character in comparison to these two. I think she's a pretty likable villain, or I at least enjoyed her as a villain, and I like Elisabeth as a character. With him, he just wasn't particularly likable, so gotta put him B. This guy, I mean, I'll put him here because I'll put him here solely because of his connection to this like servant Giles. If we're talking just him alone, he's D for sure. He didn't do much at all. But because he is like the original version of Giles, and this Giles here is the one that's been corrupted after the death of Joan of Arc, it makes him naturally a little bit cooler because this is like him before. But I don't know, those eyebrows, the missing eyebrows, I might have to drop him down to D. I don't know, he's somewhere in between. I think the eyebrows just kill it for me. I have to put them at the bottom. Alright, so here we have Jalter, and I'm not gonna lie, I think aesthetically she's like one of the coolest characters in this series. Actually using her as a servant, I think her noble phantasm is crazy cool. I just love the idea of, because we know Joan of Arc is like this holy, very righteous, basically the perfect leader. And then this is just kind of an image, or his image, of what Joan of Arc would be if she just had enough. If she was like, alright, you guys don't appreciate all the good I did for you, and left me to die there, so I'm getting my get back. Everybody's gonna die. Call out the wyverns, call out the dragons, let's burn this place down to hell. I like it. I like the duality between these two. So I'm going to put Jalter up here. And when it comes to actual Joan of Arc, this might be a hot take. This might be a hot take. I think I'd put her in A. Maybe I should order these as well, because I definitely put her at the top of A. Probably like this. And then this. Atalanta's pretty cool. She looks cool at least. But, hot take. I think I'm putting Joan of Arc in A. The reason why I put her here is just because me personally, I've never really been a fan of the like pure, kind-hearted, really nice, can never do no wrong sort of characters. It's not for me. To me, it's a little played out. It's a little boring. Even in Apocrypha, I'm not gonna lie, I feel the same way towards her in Apocrypha. I'm personally just not a fan of these super holy righteous characters. I like characters with a little bit more dynamic personality. So I gotta put her here. But obviously she's like the main character of this story. She doesn't feel very human, like very relatable, because it seems like she has no flaws. Whereas a lot of these other characters, they have flaws, but like Elisabeth, for example, she has a ton of flaws, and she acknowledges them, which I really respect. That's part of why I have her that high. Now Kiyohime. Now, well, let me read some of the comments before I continue, because I've kind of just been going on. I should do one and then see what you guys think. Both John's S tier. Jalter is probably the best part of the Singularity. I agree. Did he use Jalter before or after the animation update? I'm not sure, but it looked really cool, so I'm guessing after. Putting John in A is a lukewarm take? Okay. I didn't know if there were like Joan of Arc super fans in the chat, and they would have thought it was, you know, sacrilegious to put her anything below S. I don't know. Especially with her being the main character. Kiyohime's definitely a D. Interesting. That's fair. Evil John is always hot. True. A is better than what I would give her. Whoa. That's fair. That's fair. Now that I've like spoken it out loud, a part of me wants to lower her, but I definitely think she was better than Giles here. I might do this. I think this aligns very well with where I have her in my head. I do like Elisabeth more than her, but I can't justify putting Carmilla above her, so I think this is more in line with how I feel. For me, it's C or B. Yeah, Jeanne is boring in my opinion. I think she's very hypocritical, then a goody-goody two-shoes. Yeah. I think dynamic characters have been played out to the point where pure characters are refreshing. That's an interesting take. I like that. That's an interesting take. For me, when I think of a dynamic character, I just think of a character that has layers. You know, they're not as straightforward. Like, Joan of Arc is a character where you see her, and within like the first 5 minutes, you already know everything about her character. Everything about her personality, I mean. and like how she would respond to certain situations, what answers she would give to certain questions. You already know that. But I like characters that are more dynamic, where you don't immediately know, or maybe you think you know in the beginning, but then towards the end you find out that, oh, maybe I'm not so sure. I think her writing's solid. It's kind of cheesy, kind of cliche, but I'm not mad at it. I put a lot of these characters below D, not gonna lie. You saying that just made me realize that I'm comparing these characters to each other. So I think Jalter is S tier compared to the rest of these characters. But do I really think she's S tier in the grand scheme? You know what? No, I'll stick with how I'm doing it now. When it comes to the grand scheme of things, that's how I will look at the tier list after we finish the singularities. That one will be comparing all of the characters to the grand scheme of FGO. But for now, I just think Jalter's S tier in comparison to the Orleans characters. Jalter is an S in all regards. Wow. Okay, Kiyohime. I like Kiyohime. I really liked that scene where we got to see her banter with Elisabeth and both of them go back and forward with each other. And they actually had some pretty, like, witty comebacks to each other. But, oh my god, is this character absolutely awful to play. Yeah, I like her as a character, but she is not a very cool, fun, or interesting unit to have, so putting her in C. They did Lancelot dirty here. They did Lancelot dirty. He really didn't do anything here at all. Probably less than both of these guys, because I don't even remember what he said, if he even said anything. He's well, no, I'd put him a lot higher if we were talking about Fate Zero, but in Orleans, nah, he didn't do anything, and he died really early on. Need I say more? Need I say more? She was, oh man, what an amazing character. Everything from the sacrifice at the end, the what's up my homies, like she was honestly on the hero side the highlight of this whole singularity. And then on the villain side, I'd say Jalter was the highlight of this whole singularity. But I mean, this isn't even close. Above or below Jalter? Probably above Jalter. I'm not even gonna lie. Probably above Jalter. Marie the homie. Fair. What's up, my homies? Exactly. Viva la France. Martha now. Martha. She did more than these guys, so I'll put her up here. I don't really like her as a unit. So right now she's kind of in the same boat as Kiyohime. I'm trying to think if there's any more like redeeming qualities. I like the fact that she wasn't really a bad person, even though she was under the madness and enchantment. She was still like the hero in her, the saint in her was still kind of in there. So I'd probably put her here. Because outside of that funny moment, there isn't really much to her at all. Whereas there was, you know, a bit of depth. I mean, she wasn't here for that long, so... But I think I'm happy with this. And honestly, George being up here, I don't know if that's really fair. Probably there. Now, Amadeus. Martha's beating me. She's C, leave her at C. Above Georgios? Yeah, exactly. See, I was already thinking that in my head. I like him as a character and even as a unit. I like him. It's just he didn't add too much to the story. He was just kind of like a bodyguard. But Amadeus. It's between these two. It's between these two. I'll put him here. When it comes to Amadeus, obviously he's a weirdo. We all know he's a weirdo. Me personally, I'm not a big fan of the way... I'm not a big fan of his personality. It's kind of strange. Like, outside of the weird comments, the like freaky comments, outside of that, just his natural personality of like thinking humans are disgusting and music is beauty and stuff like that. I don't know how to really feel about that. A big reason why he's as high as he is because of that speech he gave to MASH. That was incredible. That was probably like top 2 best moments of this entire singularity. Definitely above Carmilla. I don't know. Would I put him above Joan of Arc? But that heart-to-heart moment went crazy. So I gotta give him a lot of points for that. This dude didn't really do anything either. Not gonna lie. A lot of the servants that she summoned didn't really do anything. So I don't even really have much to say to him. Top of A. Really, top of A. Me personally, I agree he's in A, but I don't know if I'd put him top of A. You guys are kind of swaying me on Joan of Arc, though. Just because the more I think about it, the more I realize, like, what he said there was probably one of the hardest hitting quotes from all that I can remember of Fate. Like, that speech really went crazy. Out of nowhere, too. Because there wasn't any remnants of that level of wisdom throughout all of the singularity, and then you just get hit with that truck. So I think I'd put him above her. It's just I don't like him as much as her. But I gotta admit, he's wise. He knows what he's talking about. He definitely would be like a good mentor. I'd want to go to him for advice. We'll leave it here for now. I might make changes later. His speech is legendary, exactly. Phantom of the Opera, one part of Chaldea, Degenerate Club. All I'm saying is I'm never bored when Mozart speaks. That's a good point. That's a good point. He does generate content in his language. It is true. It's just if I imagine myself in Orleans traveling with this guy, I'd probably be so sick of him by the end of it. But then he'd give that speech to me and I'd be like, you know what? Maybe he's not so bad after all. Now, when it comes to Sanson, I actually really like Sanson as a antagonist here. I'm thinking B so far. I'm thinking B just because his interaction, like I put her up here, or part of the reason why I put her up here was because of that sacrifice in the end. And he was a big part of that. And then how the madness enhancement kind of warped his mentality, I think that was really interesting. Because it made him like obsessed with executions and, you know, cutting off heads and stuff like that. But getting to see that the actual Sanson, or finding out that the actual Sanson isn't, that was like an exaggerated version of his normal self, but his normal self is still a little, you know, bloodthirsty. Really interesting. Plus he's got the Danganronpa art style. He looks really cool. I think I'd probably put him here. I'd leave him here just because I really do like the plot twist with him. Next, Siegfried, brother. Not a very good start. Not a very good start, I must admit, but he did come back around. The only problem is he kind of left just as soon as he came. Like, as soon as he started to actually get his strength back, he wasn't even here for very long. I'll put him above him. Probably above these two. He's either top of C or bottom of B for me. If we're taking Apocrypha into account, I put him way higher. But from what he showed here in this Singularity, I'm thinking like high C. Siegfried, it's B. Siegfried, it's B. A lot of people agreeing with B. Man showed up, killed Fafnir, and effed off. Exactly. Which is cool, don't get me wrong. But, you know, you just kind of dipped after that. So, I think I'm comfortable with putting him here. I feel the same way towards him as I did with George. The only thing is, there was some level of development to his writing. Like, he did start off injured because he was fending off the wyverns or enemies from that village. Then he got his strength back, and he got his run back with the Fafnir, which was like her trump card. So the more I think about it, I do got to give him a bit more credit, but I think just because I personally was a little disappointed with what he did here, I'll keep him C. But I wouldn't be mad if somebody put him B. Vlad, I feel the same way towards him as I did with Siegfried. I wish he would have done more, especially because of what I've seen in Apocrypha. I know he is way, way cooler than what we saw here. This was honestly very disappointing. Probably put him here. Maybe even a little below Martha, just because he didn't even do much either. This man was hanging with Karna, bro. Now, granted, I still think Karna could beat him if he was truly trying, but this guy was going toe-to-toe with Karna. And his noble phantasm is so incredibly busted. Like, he made spikes come out from the inside of Karna's body. Did you even read his dialogues? I did. If you want to remind me of anything, feel free. But I don't think that they did as much with his character as I would have liked. To be fair, if Siegfried was allowed to start with us in Orleans, then it would be a short Singularity. He'd rip and tear all... True. Good point. Good point. It's not a fair comparison. I know it's not 100% fair, but if I remove how much I like him and just think about what he did here in this Singularity alone, I still don't think I'd put him much higher. I'm not gonna lie. Vlad was talking how different his beliefs is from Carmilla despite their similar origin. Yeah, that beginning part, I mean, his conversations with Carmilla, they were interesting, but when it comes to what he did, he didn't do much. And he was only really there for the beginning, from what I remember. He has a territory buff in Romania. True, you're right. I do remember that. I do think the Orleans manga version of the Singularity gives some hard gas to every character. He had a lot of chivalry. What did you want him to do? I just wanted him to do more. I just wanted him to actually, like, because he didn't come off as very threatening. The thing is, if we think about it realistically, all of the servants that he was lined up with, that were all summoned, that all had the madness enhancement, he's probably the strongest one out of all of them. But from what they showed here, you'd think that he was on par with this guy down here in Atalante, which again, I don't know what Atalante is truly capable of, but he definitely is stronger than Atalante in Apocrypha. But here, he doesn't seem any better than the other guys he's surrounded by, so I think that nerfs his character. If we're talking about, like, actual Vlad from Apocrypha, he'd be up here. But if we're talking about Orleans Vlad and what he did here and the threat that he imposed, him being the Vlad the Impaler, the Romanian king, like, he doesn't really live up to that, in my opinion. Here. Vlad and Carmilla are kind of counterparts. Carmilla is basically a female version of him. I agree. And I see what you guys mean. It does at first glance seem a little bit weird that she's so much higher than him, but a big reason why I have her up here is also because of her connection to Elisabeth. And I do really like Elisabeth here, so a part of that trickles over to her. Because I like Elisabeth so much, and because these two are kind of like alternate, I mean, I know realistically she's based on a story that was based off of her, but they're kind of like two different sides of the same coin, and I really like this coin, so that's part of why I have her higher. Him and her being counterparts I think is really cool, but for me personally, there's got to be a little bit more to his character outside of that, and I feel like that just wasn't shown here. He hates being Dracula and has no buffs from being Romania. Without those two factors, he's not that powerful. I disagree. At least from what I've saw. Again, I don't have the context that you guys have, but you say I'm just biased. Biased against him? Biased towards him? Explain my bias. He wasn't more impressive than a lot of these other characters here. So why would I put him way up here if I personally didn't find him to be too much more impressive than these other guys here? Madness enhancement might make someone more physically stronger, but it doesn't necessarily make them better. Some can appear weaker due to losing their technique. That could be the case. Bias towards him? So bias towards him would be, I mean, the way I'm interpreting that, bias towards him would be rating him too high. Biased against him would be rating him too low. That's how I see it. I think C is fair for him. He didn't do much. He feels more like an obstacle in Orleans. Oh wait, there was a comment someone made earlier. When I talk about how much I like Dracula, majority of the things that I'm talking about is even before he becomes Dracula. Him becoming Dracula has not been taken into account in my mind when it comes to everything that I've said before now. I think it's interesting that they went that route, but I don't really care too much about his Dracula form, especially because he didn't do much in that form. He was interesting as a character, not as a fighter. Yeah, but there are other people that I've rated higher that were interesting as characters and didn't really fight much. Like him, for example. A big reason I have him higher isn't because he's a fighter, it's because of that big plot twist in the end, and because all of the craziness of the singularity was basically a result of his wish and the corruption in his mind influencing that wish. That's why I have him this high. When it comes to Sanson, a big reason is because of his dynamic with Marie Antoinette here. And Carmilla as well. It wasn't because of her fighting, it was because of her connection to Elisabeth, and I really like Elisabeth. So that, how much I like Elisabeth is a reason why she's up here, but also the duality between the two Elisabeths is another reason why I have them up here. So Vlad, I have him here because I do like the writing and his connection to Carmilla, but he didn't have much outside of that. And I don't think that was impressive enough for me to put him any higher. So that's why I have him here. What I'm saying is his fighting could have made me put him higher, because I think he's actually quite a capable servant, but the fact that they didn't include his fighting doesn't really give me any reason to put him higher than where I have him here. Sure, whatever, it's your list after all. I mean, hey, this is all my opinion. I understand that there's going to be some people that really like characters that I'm just not a big fan of. I just hope that my justification makes sense. That's all I'm hoping for. Because me personally, I don't think the writing for his character here justifies putting him next to Sanson or next to this guy who had much more impactful moments in the series. He had good writing, he said cool things that I like, but these guys I think were more impactful, so I'd put him higher. I can understand what you're saying, but putting Vlad under Martha and Siegfried is crazy. Maybe under Martha is crazy. After talking it out with you guys, I'd probably put her above Martha, but if I'm being completely honest, I feel just about the same way towards both of them when it comes to how I value them in this singularity. I'd probably put them about at the same point. Kiyohime is too low. She was way more memorable. Memorable, true. I agree. But when it comes to what did she provide to the story, she didn't really provide much. She especially didn't provide as much as Elisabeth here. Elisabeth contributed a lot more to the story than Kiyohime did. She was just kind of here cracking jokes and, you know, poking fun, which I like, but there's just not much more than that. I personally would have put Sieg below Vlad and Martha. Her being able to overcome the madness enhancement and tell us about Sieg was very clever. That is, you know what? That is a good point. That is a good point. She did, but did she truly overcome it? Because I could be wrong, but I remember her telling us about Sieg after we defeated her. And it kind of seems like all of these guys have like a coming to light moment after we defeat them. But I do remember her being able to like somewhat go through or resist the madness enhancement. Maybe I'm misremembering. Comparing Siegfried and Vlad writing wise though is crazy. At least lower Siegfried a bit. One thing I can say is that I think all of these characters up here had like a real impact to the story. All of these characters had a real impact to the story, and they added quite a bit of value to the story. These down here definitely didn't impact much, so just that's straight out the table. When it comes to these characters here, they did things, but the things that they did weren't very game-changing. If anything, dude, I might lower her. At least with Martha here, she did point us out to Siegfried. Even though she was under the control of the enemy, she gave us a tip that helped us out immensely, because Siegfried would go on to take down Fafnir. I think that's also another reason why earlier you said I should at least lower Siegfried. Siegfried did take down like he did take down Fafnir, which was the big dragon that was like her right hand man. He was like her trump card. He was supposed to be the big threatening force that, you know, everyone was afraid of. Siegfried came in, cleaned up. I'd say that is more impactful than what Vlad did in this story. Now, he said very cool things. I really like his dialogue. I like his character. Like you said, the connection between him and Carmilla, it's great. But how did he impact the story? Not too much. The criteria that I'm using when rating these characters is their impact on the story. So like how influential their actions were in the story to either progressing the story or halting that progression. A second criteria, which is obviously going to bring bias, is just how much I personally like the character. So like, for example, I personally really like Elisabeth. There's some of you people in chat that probably don't like her at all and probably would have her in C or B. But I personally really like her. I think she's funny. I like the whole idol aspect of her character. I like the lore behind her character and the connection to Carmilla, how she even said herself, like, Carmilla is her in the future. I love all of that stuff. I think it makes her a very interesting character. And this is a lot more than what I could say for Vlad. That's why I have Vlad so much lower than them. But, so we have how they impact the story, how much I personally like the character. And I guess the last one would be, like, lore. That I've, like, history and, you know, facts and stuff that I've learned about the characters during the Singularity. George could take down Fafnir too. I wouldn't be surprised, because I know George is also a Dragon Slayer. If he would have taken down Fafnir, then if he took down Fafnir and Siegfried didn't, I would switch them, pretty much. I mean, Siegfried eliminating one of the biggest threats in Orleans, that's got to count for something. And, well, not count for something, that's got to count for quite a bit. That's why I'd put him towards the higher end of C. But damn it, Liz is a great character regardless. I agree, I really like Liz's character. And even with Amadeus, see, Amadeus is a great example. I like how I have these two characters right next to each other because I really like Elisabeth's character and I really don't like Mozart's character. But as someone mentioned, he definitely made a lot of situations interesting, and he had that amazing, as you guys said, legendary speech, which even though I'd give him low points for how much I like him, these other things put him up higher. And when you take into account the fact that his words stuck with MASH even in the future, like 5 singularities later, that shows that he not only, well, that shows that he had a real impact on her, and she's the main character, or one of them. So I think you gotta put a lot of respect on his name for sure. Okay, Siegfried being able to defeat Fafnir is like Scissors defeating a paper, and calling Scissors an impressive character. Well, if we're talking about the context of this situation right here, then yes, I would say it's impressive, because many of these guys couldn't do that. Many of these guys could not take down Fafnir. The reason why we went to him is because he's a dragon slayer, and he's taken down a dragon before. That's clearly a feat that not everybody's capable of. Because if he wasn't here to take that dragon down, and then let's say if George wasn't here to take that dragon down, then we'd be in a lot more trouble. We'd be in a heck of a lot more trouble. So he made things a lot easier for the main characters and for the heroes to be able to succeed. Siegfried said he was lucky the first time he beat Fafnir. True, but he did it again. Kiyohime actually has an interesting perception of the player. She views him as an incarnation of the man she loved in life, which is why after the singularity, she's the servant that appears in a box. That's a good point. That's a good point. But anyways, it's getting to about that time. I think next stream we'll probably do the Septum tier list. Overall, I'm happy with this list. No, I'm cool with this. I think I said I'd come back to these two, but I'm happy with where they are. I like this list. I think we're locking it in. We're locking it in. S tier, we have Marie Antoinette and Jalter. In A tier, we have Elisabeth Bathory. We have Amadeus. We have Joan of Arc, and we have Carmilla. In B tier, we have Gilles de Rais and Sanson. In C tier, we have Siegfried, we have Vlad III, we have Martha, Kiyohime, and George. And then in D tier, we have Atalante, we have Giles, good guy Giles, with no eyebrows. We have, I don't remember this guy's name. I think it's like Dayan or something. Or maybe that was his last name. We have Lancelot, and then we have Phantom of the Opera. And I think I agree with this order too. So I'm locking it in. I'll take a screenshot of it later. But anyways, thank you guys for stopping by the stream, and I will catch you all next week, Tuesday, for the continuation of Okeanos.